3% deficit to GDP by within the next. This has bipartisan support. We're hoping to see that support grow. You've talked about this. You've set a goal of wanting to be a percentage of GDP starting with 3 by the end of administration. I wonder if you about the importance of that goal as well. In just a few seconds I have remaining.
Yes, sir. I came out from behind the desk and am here today because I was concerned about that trajectory. And I do believe it is possible to the history deficit to GDP. And while that is not a balanced budget, if you have nominal growth above that level, you are paying debt.
Ms. Chu.
Secretary Bessent, since President Trump launched his illegal war in Iran, really assured Americans that higher prices would be temporary. In March, you said American only 50 days of temporary elevated prices. Secretary Bessent, it's been almost 100 days and inflation is at with no indication of going down. In May, you said help is on the way when it comes to skyrocketing gas prices. A month later, Americans are still searching for the relief you promised as they pay more than double at the pump before the war started. Later described rising inflation as a limited sight. In reality, for the first time in 3 years, inflation is outpacing Americans, and American saving rate dropped by half since last year. And just yesterday, before the Senate Finance Committee, you again characterized inflation as a short-term blip. Recently, President Trump proudly claimed that he doesn't think about Americans' financial situation when it comes to the war with Iran. So I want to ask you, Secretary Bessent, do you agree with President Trump that you also do not care about American financial?
Congresswoman, who was the president during World War I?
Can you?
No,
are you refusing to answer my question?
No, I'm asking who's World War I? I don't know who the president during World War I was. But let me tell you.
So I'm clearly getting the idea that you do not want to answer whether you agree with President Trump that you do not care about Americans' financial situations.
President Trump does care about Americans' financial situation.
Well, he actually said that he doesn't.
No, that is a truncated thing, like everything is, that he is future-proofing, because I can tell you, Americans' financial situations would be devastated if Iran got, and there was permanent shutdown of the flow of energy to the Middle East.
Well, then let me ask you,
I promise you that President
I'm taking my time back.
I will promise you that President Woodrow Wilson, who was president during World War I, that the Germans did not attack us, that he got into that. It was
you're not answering the question, so let me ask this.
And I guarantee
was your
you,
prediction that Americans
Woodrow
would
Wilson
face
felt the same
only 50 days of temporary elevated prices wrong? You said that Americans would face only 50 days of temporary elevated prices. Was that wrong? Since actually, of course, we're at 100 days now.
The issue of gasoline prices come down from the peak, 7%. Crude prices are down more than 20, and gasoline prices follow crude prices.
Well, then reclaiming my time, gas prices are up by 54 started and up nearly 30% from last year. Diesel and even faster because refining markets are strained. Utility costs have soared, natural gas and fuel input costs, and that means commutes, home heating and electricity, airline ticket, delivery fees are all more expensive. And how about grocery prices? They jumped more in April than they did since when Biden was president. Beef is up by 15%. Tomatoes are up by 40%. Bread and milk are up 8% and 5% compared to 3 months ago. And it's those lower income households that are hardest hit by inflation, forced to cut back on. Excuse me, it's my time, but that'd be hard for a billionaire like you to imagine how these lower income households would be hit by inflation. In fact, Trump said he couldn't care less about higher car prices for Americans. Do you agree with that statement?
I believe that food prices are up 2.5% since President Trump took office. I know that's an inconvenient fact for you. You're from California. Maybe you care about avocado prices. Maybe you want them higher, but they're down 19%.
Is to go to the grocery store to see that beef is up by 15%, up by 40%, and bread and milk are up by 8%.
You don't get to pick and choose. It is a basket, and the basket is up 2.5%. During the Biden era, it was up 5%
Well,
a year.
you paint such a rosy picture,
5% a year.
but Americans are not experiencing this rosy picture that you paint. They are asking, are my wages keeping up with costs? Can I afford the things that my family needs? And I'm afraid the answer is no.
I'm afraid you're incorrect, because we had real wage increases every month since President Trump took office, except for the month of April. So I know the facts don't align with your narrative. But please, you're entitled.
It's not lining up with what Americans are experiencing right now.
You're not entitled. You're entitled to your opinion, not your own facts.
Back.
Mr. Hearn.
Mr. Secretary, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here. And, I can see you're talking a lot about the facts. The facts are, is during the 4 years of Joe Biden, we had a 25% increase in prices. No way did wages keep up. Gas prices we've seen the last decade were under Joe Biden, but my colleagues have gotten amnesia. But almost a year ago, Mr. Trump signed the working cuts into law, the largest tax increase of work and furnishing, getting that across the finish line. A huge working tax cuts was many provisions of the 20 TCJA, including eliminating the lockout if used to bring intellectual property and profits back to the United States. Rates for all, to small business deduction, expensing provisions, which have been proven to growth and job creation. Compared to last year, the lack of privacy in these policies hindered economic growth and job creation. But thanks to the working family tax cut, businesses now have the certainty to grow, invest, and create jobs here in America. I now want to shift to the expensing of pro-tax family tax cuts. After the passage of TCJA, bonus to businesses deduct the full cost of equipment immediately, but the thing that housed the machinery had to be depreciated over a much longer 39-year schedule. Gap in U.S. tax policy, manufacturers could quickly recover the cost of machines, but the cost to recover for the enormous physical factories lagged far behind. Last tax law accelerated expensing treatment to the structures of new domestic production facilities, manufacturers to quickly recover the cost of the building, and it's attractive for companies to invest in expanding U.S. manufacturing, and in fact have. We see about it, we read about it. Those are the facts. The passage of the working family tax, percent of manufacturers surveyed said intended to use new provision to advance the cost of the construction or expanding and manufacturing over the next 4 years. Mr. Secretary, my first question, last the importance provision, and you said that it's for factories in a playing field with countries that heavily subsidize their industries and as at the end of 29. Do you believe this provision should be made permanent or intended to continue incentivizing the expansion of U.S. manufacturing capacity and job creation? And also, response, could you also talk your 3-3 plan and that's part of the integration of that?
I think we should extend or make it permanent. I was able to go and visit in Minnesota, and they told me that because of they were on the fence on whether to do a battery project for their RVs in Florida to build a factory, but because of the full fencing of structures, they were doing it. And I think we are seeing that again and again. Congressman, what is very important here, and I don't think people really understand, we are creating capacity. Capacity is what generates future. So you get to taxes now, but then you create an accelerated stream of is much higher a multiplier effect after that. I call it the slingshot effect. For 2 years, I think we're going to see this burst of factories and manufacturers that were encumbered under the Biden administration. And I think going forward, we're going to see a breakout in corporate income tax receipts.
Mr. Secretary, I think what you're describing it shows the ignorance of the critics of this policy, because it's very easy to shut down a building or a facility to build something and re-staff it. Businesses back from abroad. So I applaud you. We're going to build it, and they are going to come. And then, question, I have significant concern with third-party funding in the United States, particularly regarding the tax treatment of these profits derived from it. There's are claiming capital gains treatment, and is, and best, questionable that uncated claims of constitute capital assets, distorting our judicial system and turning the system into a casino. And I'll really look for your team at the IRS to work with me and look at how we have this tax treatment practice. People across concerned about sovereign wealth and others that are.
Congressman, to working on that, especially international foreign money that is coming in and gumming up the works and sponsoring these lawsuits in our system.
And paying no taxes.
And paying no taxes. So I look forward to working with you on this.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Mrs. Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. Terry Bessent, thank you here today. I found it the animosity and lack of decorum from some of the members of this committee. Courtesy takes us a long way. Lifelong small businesswoman, and I want to emphasize the importance of working with business-minded leaders, rations who may not fully understand the real harm that bad policy inflicts on everyday Americans, especially back home in my state of West Virginia. The Working Families Tax Cuts provide to our families, our farmers, and our small businesses across the country, and it fulfilled President Trump's promise of tax relief and certainty. Priorities in Saving the Economy Taxpayer Act, which repealed the Biden administration's harmful 1099-K reporting threshold of $600, and it restored the proven standard of $20,000 and 200 transactions. To how much of an effect that this policy had on the tax filings of Americans.
That I think that just speaks to the Democratic Party of Main Street. They're the, you know what, they're the party of bringing this down. That it was one of the reckless. They were going to create this work for small businesses. Many of them, they have service businesses. And to do this, and the magnitude from 20,000 to 6,000, it just shows a complete tin ear of an administration that probably had a record low business people involved with the administration and what they viewed the experience. So I think realigning that for Main Street and small businesses was essential, and we have seen no effect at the IRS in terms of the revenues from that.
That's right. If anything, it's better. In your testimony, you mentioned President Trump's signature new tax cuts, and specifically the no tax on overtime provision, which rewarded hourly workers to deduct up to $12,500 or $25,000 for married couples. This pro-growth policy has helped expand domestic manufacturing in our country and help hourly workers keep more of what they earn. Have you seen that the no tax policy benefit our taxpayers this past tax season?
Representative, I was with President Trump on April 15th in Las Vegas for a rally for tax day for his signature policies. And he asked for a show of support in the crowd, the home of the service and the tipped income. And actually the time got a bigger ovation than the no tax on tips. And it's the American way. We had 75% of the filers make under $100,000, 90% make under $200,000, and the average deduction $100. And it's the American way. If you want to work harder, you get to keep more of your take-home pay. I was with a group of small business owners out in California near the Reagan Library, and I was in a local Italian restaurant there. The owner loves it because of problems. So now he has experienced staff. He's happy to pay the overtime, and the employees are happy to work the hours.
Very much so. Thank you so much. I yield back my.
Thank you. Before I recognize the gentlelady from Alabama, I want to inform members that at the request of our witness, I intend to call a brief recess following Ms. question. Now recognize the lady for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you promised the American people that the big, beautiful bill would lead to big economic boom for the American people. On July 3rd, 2025, after the passage of the so-called bill, you said that the legislation would unleash growth in the American economy. Republicans pledged that it would stimulate economic growth and lead to an additional $2.4 trillion in government revenue. However, the most recent GDP data shows that it barely grew in the last quarter of 2025 at a rate of 5% and continues to fall below expected quarter of 2026. Time and time, you hold the American people's own eyes or what's in their bank accounts, while families have been hit with higher costs from tariffs and his costly war on in Iran. This administration continues to insist that the economy is thriving. The reality, sir, especially for the folks that I represent in Alabama, you've had 5.4% growth in GDP for the fourth quarter and only delivered a 0.5% growth. The reality is that wages have fallen behind rising inflation and that job growth dramatic since Trump took office. Mr. Secretary, I'm asking you rhetorically the following questions. I ask you, why was your analysis so wrong? And I'm asking you rhetorically yourself not to be answer questions on this side. So let me try to answer it. Could it be that Trump's illegal tariff, cost of the war of choice in Iran were the reasons why you're whatever the reason? I want you to know that the people in Alabama are hurting under this economy. Prices 0.6% over last year. Energy prices are, and exports of Alabama products and services have dropped by $3 billion since President Trump took. In addition, the Iran war has American households over $1 billion. Grocery prices are rising in the last 4 years, and gas is over $4 a gallon in Alabama, where last year it was only $3. Mr. Secretary, your economy, this economy under this is failing the American people, and we can and must do better. Question, or my second topic I'd like to discuss is what's going on. Sir, I haven't asked you one single question.
I will point out
Mr. Chairman, I asked to
5.4%
reclaim my
was the
time.
Atlanta
I'm not
Fed
asking him a
GDP now.
question. I'm stating facts.
You're not stating facts, you're stating opinion.
Mr. Secretary, Black and brown Americans feel like they are under attack by this administration. President Trump has ordered state legislators across the country to redraw maps to dilute Black political Moreover, Trump has weaponized the DOJ to go after groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center because of the work that they've done to expose white supremacist groups that are President Trump. I am asking you, sir, that if the IRS plays a role in these cases, I ask that you ensure that the IRS is not improperly influenced by the president or this administration during the duration of that case. And I trust that you will make sure that that does happen. Lastly, Representative Davis sent several IRS, and I think that Representative Davis asked you about it. This most recent tax season was the first time that the president signed an executive order in September of last year that ceased paper refund checks from being. This decision to up in paper checks has led to a significant delay in refunds for those. And I understand in your response to Mr. Davis, you said that 95% of those that receive their refunds get them electronically. Well, I represent the 5% that do not have access to electronic repayment. Those folks need paper checks and they need their refunds now. I trust that this administration will do all that it can to make sure that all, irrespective of whether they're unbanked or have access to electronic payment funds. And Mr. Davis asked a question that you didn't answer, but I'd like to. We're asking that you and your office, that the Treasury Department, work with us to make sure that our constituents get their refund checks.
I will commit to do that.
Thank you, sir. I yield back balance of my time.
And to be clear, that number 5.4% was the Atlanta Fed GDP now convenient. So
Thanks. Committee will stand in a 5-minute brief recess.
is currently at a record low. For American has dropped to 2.6%, cut in half. When we look at this economy, we see failure upon failure. The policies that have been proposed have not worked for average Americans. Families are getting crushed, and we would suggest today that a new course of action needs to be taken. Republicans have made it clear that they don't want to put stop chaos. But Democrats are unwavering in our fight for American families to lower cost and to end the harm that is being done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Today's sole witness is United States Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. The committee has received, and it will be part of the formal hearing record. Secretary Bessent, you have 5 minutes to deliver your remarks, and you may begin when you're ready.
good. Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Neal, and members of the committee, thank you for convening today's hearing. I'm grateful to discuss President Trump's 2027 budget, which builds on this administration's progress in unleashing a new era of economic expansion. I last appeared before this committee just a few weeks before the House passed the Working Families Tax. The heels of the most successful filings in an IRS. Be remiss if I did not begin by thanking the committee for helping to deliver this once-in-a-generation bill to the president's desk. This tax day, under President Trump, we celebrated how much more money hardworking Americans kept, not how much the government took. Over 62 million tax returns claimed at least one of President Trump's signature new tax cuts. No tax in overtime, deductibility, American car interest loans. Refund increased by over 11%, with total refund by 18%. But as important as what the legislation achieves, it is what it prevented. If opponents of the working families tax cuts had had their way, our economy would have absorbed the largest tax hike in its history, over $5 trillion. 90% of American taxpayers would have seen standard deduction slashed, or would have seen their child tax credit halved. Instead, this committee held the line, and the American people had a better day because of it. Notably, President Trump's pro-growth policies don't stop at putting more money back in the pockets of families. They extend to placing the American dream within closer reach of their children. For context, nearly 40% of Americans have no exposure to U.S. equities, no stakes in the companies they helped to build. Trump accounts represent a profound reimagining of that arrangement. They will ensure that every American child can benefit from private ownership and compound growth, that every American child, in short, to date, nearly 6 million Trump accounts have been opened, with 1.4 million eligible for the 1,000 seed contribution. Of course, as this tax cuts deliver relief for Americans, President Trump's economic agenda is bolstered by two other distinct but reinforcing regulation. Let me briefly address both of these in turn. First, the President is undeterred in his determination to open markets for U.S. while rebuilding U.S. manufacturing capacity. Over the 12 months ending March 2026, the trade deficit for goods declined by $370 billion compared to the same timeframe ending March 2025. The economy has added 313,000 new private sector jobs and 13,000 manufacturing jobs in the past 2 months. Firm capital expenditures rose at an annual rate of over 17% in the final quarter, and companies are investing trillions to build and expand here at home. American industry is winning again to the benefit of American workers. A whole-of-government approach, meanwhile, is coupling our manufacturing revival with a great regulatory reset. Properly calibrated regulation is essential for economic growth, capital formation, employment, and higher wages. So at the outset of this administration, President Trump set the ambitious benchmark of slashing 10 existing regulations before issuing a new one. In 2025, we shattered that goal with a ratio of 109-1, and as a result, the regulatory actions generated more savings last year than in those of the prior Trump administration combined. Separately, any one of these initiatives on trade, tax cuts, and deregulation would be substantial. Taken together, they are transformative. Before President Trump took office, our trading partners exploited America's markets, our regulatory state smothered businesses, and our tax codes punished workers and job creators. Today, his policies are driving lower taxes, bigger paychecks, and broader prosperity. So I thank this committee for its partnership.
We'll now proceed to the question and answer series. Yesterday in the Senate, you received a lot of questions from the Democrats over the anti-weaponization fund, which Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said on the record is dead. You also told the Senate Finance Committee over and over and over and over a few more times again that you cannot discuss the settlement the case due to ongoing litigation. Can you please set the record straight right at the top of this hearing so members do not limit time asking you questions you cannot answer? What is the status of the fund, the settlement agreement part? Did IRS CEO Mr. Bisignano play in both?
Thank you for this question, Mr. Chairman. I said yesterday that Einstein's definition of insanity is asking the same question over and over again and expecting a different answer. Let me be clear, as we've done throughout this matter, the Department of Treasury is following the direction of the Department of Justice. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche testified the government will not be moving forward with the fund. We intend to comply with that General Blanche's direction. I do not have any details into what that means at this time. In the Acting Attorney General Blanche's statement Tuesday, this matter is still subject to ongoing litigation, so I'm unable to comment further on it. That means I'm also not able to discuss any part of the settlement agreement. As with all department litigation, the Department of the Treasury are represented by the Justice Department. Questions about the settlement or the fund should be to Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. To your point about Mr. Biziano, while I will note that the settlement agreement calls for the United States to issue an apology to the plaintiffs for, among other things, leaking their tax returns. Mr. Chairman, President Trump is a great American who has endured over 10 years of harassment and weaponization from all levels of government. No American should be targeted for political reasons.
For starting out with this tax filing season was the most historic because of the tax relief delivered to working class families through the Working Families Tax Cuts. How much total do Americans get just this tax season?
Approximately $325 billion, Mr. Chairman.
And how much did the average individual tax refund?
The average refund increased by more than 11%, but that does not reflect the dollar value. As the ranking member said, we delivered, that is incorrect because so many people owed taxes last year that the dollar increase was actually much larger, going from negative to positive. As I travel the country, I have so many taxpayers because they had to pay last year and they got a refund this year.
So how many taxpayers claimed of President Trump's priorities of no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, or the auto loan interest?
Approximately 62 million filers, or about 44%, Mr. Chairman.
And so what percent of tax filers who received a tax cut in filing season earned less than $100,000?
Just over 70%, sir.
70%.
70.
So what percent of waiters and other tipped workers who received a tax cut, thanks to the no tax on tips, earned less than $100,000?
90%.
90.
90.
It's need it the most. Funny. Democrats always claim all working families' tax cuts were for billionaires. Mr. Secretary, I'm sure you know a lot of billionaires. Do you know billionaires that was able to use the no tax on tips deduction?
I have plenty of billionaires I give tips to, but not monetary tips, sir.
Do you know of any billionaires that was able to use the no time deduction?
No, sir.
Absolutely not. But you'll hear all day today that this tax cut was for the billionaires. I'm sure we'll hear about inflation in the economy today too. And so at this point, during President Biden, what was the core inflation rate?
6.2%, which led us to the worst inflation in 40 years, sir.
Absolutely. Was the highest under Biden? What was the highest?
6.6.
6.6.
September of 22.
And so what is core inflation this very second?
2.8%.
2.8%. But at this time, during the Biden administration, it was 6.2?
Yes, sir.
Wow. You wouldn't think that was the case based on the rhetoric coming from the other side. That's what we're going to get. The Working Families Tax Cuts renewed and revamped the Opportunity Zone programs to ensure that rural communities get their share of the benefits. The law provides incentives that will drive an estimated $100 billion in new investments into rural, helping small small businesses and working families in overlooked areas of the country. How is the Trump administration implementing this improved op program to ensure rural communities that I represent are in fact benefiting in the way Congress intended? And how is Treasury utilizing the new transparency requirements within the program to reinforce this effort to target those underserved communities?
Mr. Chairman, in a rural community, I'm very excited by the prospect of these opportunities being available there. I think it is new and important seeing the success, and I'm also excited by the permanence. And I would also point out that many members from the other side of the aisle have called concerned about losing opportunities or states in the case of senators. And I pointed out to them that they voted against them, but we will work with them on these opportunities. Congress wanted to reach the all levels, and we are working on transparency requirements, which are critical because to make sure that the investment is reaching the rural communities, small businesses, and local projects.
Thank you. On January 5th, 2026, through the hard work of both you and your staff, the Treasury Department secured a side-by-side agreement that largely exempts U.S. headquartered multinational enterprises from the OECD's income inclusion rule and undertaxed payments rule. This is a major win for U.S. tax sovereignty. How confident are you that this agreement will be respected and fully implemented by OECD members, particularly in the European Union?
I believe that we have the tools necessary that if our sovereignty is not respected, counteract any failures to act this. And I believe this is important. With this, the money comes into the rather than foreign treasuries, Mr. Chairman.
What I would say, Secretary, you can count on us as working hand in glove as allies, because Congress can also move legislation to make sure that they honor this. And we're willing to do that if they do not honor commitment.
Mr. Chairman, I will point out that my friend Senator Wyden complimented the side-by-side when he was back in Oregon recently.
It's great to hear. What monitoring has Treasury put in place to ensure that U.S. companies are not subjected to Tory treatment?
We frequently meet with we have active engagement with the OECD on.
Thank you. I now recognize the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A reminder that members of the committee, they get to decide how to allocate their 5 minutes as long as they're within the framework of the they wish to. So, Mr. Secretary, were you of Treasury informed of the settlement that the Attorney General entered into plan of the fund?
Again, Congressman, there's ongoing litigation, and as I said, I'm unable to answer.
Fine. So I think we can agree upon this. There were 400,000 taxpayers that had their tax information leaked when Charles Littlejohn released that information. We all agree and should have their taxpayer information leaked. It's a clear violation. But if we follow what has been proposed, then the suggestion would be that these 400,000 people would be to any sort of over.
Again, I'm unable to comment on that.
Okay. Okay. So to go back to part of the statistical data that's been gathered. With Barnstable, Massachusetts, hub on Cape Cod for commercial and transportation activity, they rely on dollars. It's a big deal. Over the last 54% decrease in Canadian tourists. We're slow walking the tariff refunds. You and I were there, as I reminded the audience today, when the Supreme Court heard those arguments, and the suggestion was that the tax refunds were going to proceed expeditiously. That is not happening. There have been arguments that somehow that they've been slow walked on purpose because they did cost $166 billion, which would come from revenue that previously had been allocated. In Las Vegas, those who fly into the Harry Reid Airport, 4.9 million people flew in last year. That's 12%. The positions that we have taken on the tariffs, the positions that we have taken on trade, have really been inconsistent with previous presidents and previous. We understand how tariffs might be used to penalize an adversary, but the application of these tariffs are the American family, increases that are experienced, particularly in the agricultural states where we can see where much of the political turmoil is now playing out. Ground beef is up by 20%. As I noted earlier, gasoline, 51%. Airfares have spiked by 20%. In turn, there's a price hike because of the economic policies that the president has embraced. Inflation has hit 3.8%. Lifestyle now is the independence of the Federal Reserve Board, the purpose of political suggestions. Let me suggest here that we think that the independence of the Federal Reserve Board, and in fact, the independence of the former chairman of that board, helped to guide us through a very rocky period of time. It was denigrated time and again, despite the fact that it was an honest, patriotic effort that was made by that chairman to get us through a very time. But if we don't like the outcome with the Consumer Price Index, we get rid of the forecaster. If we don't like the result of what the Federal Reserve Board has said, then we threaten and intimidate the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board. The argument has been, since your last visit, that lowering costs was something that we all embraced. But there's a fundamental acknowledgement in it. I cited a previous statistic that I think remains very compelling this morning. 77% of the American people now with the economic positions that are being embraced by the administration. With that, I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan.
Thank you, for Secretary. Passing the working family tax cuts was a major win. In addition to the record tax refunds that millions of Americans have received, I'm especially excited about the law as it pertains to small business. 100% bonus depreciation for business investment will boost the economic growth in manufacturing by encouraging small business to invest in America. Someone that's been in business for a lot of years, I can tell you the reality is very much the case. In addition, the permanent 199A small business deduction will make it easier for businesses to reinvest in their corporations or operations. More than anything else, I'm excited about the fact that we made a lot of this permanent. It'll make a huge difference going forward, and it has already. Working families' tax cuts are ensuring that American businesses can thrive and grow in the economy. I had a good fortune of being chairman of the Florida Chamber. We had 130,000 businesses, and these tax things, I can tell you, make a big difference. And the guy who's Mark, who's CEO, made that reference to me many times. Mr. Secretary, the small businesses in my district tell me 100% bonus depreciation is so important that that decision is key to their buying equipment and other things. What's your thoughts on that, or your experience on the bonus depreciation part?
Congressman, I believe that the full deductibility of the equipment is one of the greatest driving forces we are seeing in our manufacturing and, in fact, our main. And I think equally important is the permanence. The Republican Congress made this permanent, so great certainty, and the 20% pass-through rate is also made permanent, is giving small business permanence.
Can you touch on 199A? That's a big thing for a lot of people in the district. It levels the playing field with the corporations where they got cut 35 to 21 or whatever, or 20. But this will give that 20%. But I wanted to get your thoughts and what you're seeing.
Yes, sir. It gives the average small business about $7,000, and the small business deduction cuts tax small business owners by $4,600. And again, what is important here is the certainty and the permanence. It allows small businesses to invest and plan for the future.
And then let me just touch on in my district, being in Florida, we have a lot of, obviously, seniors, one of the, I think the fifth most seniors in terms of that. And they're excited about this cut. I think it's 200,000 seniors that I have in my district, but the number is a huge number across the country. Where is that at today? And I think more importantly to me, or one of the big things, is to making sure we're talking to a lot of our seniors, because most of them are taking advantage, but my sense of it is not all of them are taking advantage. What are we doing to communicate with the seniors that haven't taken advantage of the opportunity?
Congressman, I was just down at the Villages in Florida, the largest retirement community, not in the United States, but in the world. And I cannot tell you the enthusiastic reception that them being able to keep most of their Social Security has made. And these are not the well-to-do people, maybe at the Villages, but in general, that when we saw 68% of the filers made less than $100,000 and not the filers, 96% make less than $1,000.
Yeah, all for many of these hearings or different meetings that we'd be involved in, many times with senior organizations, and they always complained or thought about, when are we going to, just once on Social Security, we got to pay it again. So that's a big deal. But I just want to make sure we're doing everything we can to communicate with them so they can take advantage of it. Most have, but there's many that haven't. But thanks for your leadership and all you've done for the country.
Good, thank you, sir. And Treasury is working with Social Security Administration to make sure everyone is taking advantage.
With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Doggett.
During your term as Treasury Secretary, the IRS taxpayer be granted immunity from an audit for their taxes?
Again, one portion of that is the under litigation, so I'm not able to.
Yes, sir. It isn't a question of being not able, it's being not want to. But my question is about,
as I said,
thank you, sir.
There is litigation.
Reserving my time, my question to you again is,
definition of insanity.
in the ordinary practice of the Treasury Department, has there ever been a recommendation that a taxpayer be granted immunity from an audit of their taxes?
Sorry, what was that?
Same question. Has the IRS recommended that any taxpayer be granted an audit of their taxes?
Again, I'm unable to answer that.
You can answer it. You refuse to answer. Can you tell the American people, in the history of the Treasury Department, has there ever been a taxpayer who's been recommended to have immunity from an audit?
Has there ever been a taxpayer who had his tax reduced, and every
so
employee?
I'll take that as a no.
Employees.
Let me ask you, sir, since you say you're relying,
to the president.
thank you, I reserve
employees today.
Maintaining my time,
that.
and since you refuse to answer, let me ask you, since you say you're following the advice of Attorney General, defense attorney for Mr. Trump, as you know, the Attorney General cannot compromise a tax dispute unless it's referred to him from the IRS for prosecution or defense. Have you ever been involved in any way in a tax dispute to the Attorney General?
Again, I cannot comment on that.
You can comment. Your argument here that you can't comment in this case makes as much sense as President Trump saying that he cannot. I understand you want to talk over me, but you're answering the question. I have defined insanity by referring to Einstein today and yesterday in the Senate defines deception, and that's what you're doing to the American people. Isn't it correct, sir, that the Financial Management Service within the Treasury Department must give approval before any payment can be made from the judgment fund?
Sir, we administer the payments.
Yes, sir. You give approval to it. And
no, sir. We administer them.
You make a sign off on them being.
We administer them just like if you tell your bank to wire money.
Did
bank does not say do not pay. You shouldn't pay your Visa bill.
It had been only confirmed by the Senate a few months earlier as Treasury General Counsel. Do a good job for you. Can you answer that just with a yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, he did. And as you know, he abruptly resigned rather than be associated with the CD Trump slush fund deal, anything.
Sir,
Can you pledge to the
unless you
committee?
are-
I'm asking you a question, sir. If you can you pledge that you will assure that no retaliation occurs against the career IRS employees who wrote the 25-page memo asking the Department of Justice to halt action on this outrageous immunity deal?
Sir, follow the law.
You follow the law and
we
assuring the committee
always
that
follow
you
the
won't
law.
retaliate against those courageous career employees?
We always follow the law.
What's involved here, sir, is the most corrupt deal. Truly incredible that a president of the United States come in and people of the United States for $10 billion and then walk off with an immunity deal that no other American has ever had, nor could they receive. And to get that immunity deal from his former criminal defense attorney, who he has appointed as acting attorney general. This is the kind of corruption that would permit the Trump family, if the Wall Street Journal is correct, that Trump earned $5 billion from his crypto bills last year, to pay him or not pay him as he do. He made no complaint about the audits in his petition, and yet suddenly out of nowhere, he's granted immunity in what some have said in a report would be $100,000 benefit, $1 billion benefit. You know that there is a responsibility of your department to do audits of the. A report of this committee indicates that only one was begun during the first term. What are you doing to assure that those annual audits occur this year? The first 3 years, nothing. Has anything been done about responsibility?
Again, sir, due to IRS.
I'm not talking about
IRS Rule 6103, which prohibits the discussion of taxpayer information.
it doesn't. It doesn't prohibit your.
With Mr. Littlejohn.
Yes, sir. It
And
doesn't. You
want the
indicating
automatic
what you are
5-year
going to
jail
assure
time.
with the law and with the practice of the
I
Internal
am
Revenue Service.
finding
So I think we can
following the
assume from your
private-
reception today that nothing's being done. The president is being, no other president, no other American citizen has ever been treated
I would agree
in an
with that, sir.
incredibly corrupt deal.
I would
yield
agree
back.
as being treated person has ever been treated.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today. I think these conversations are enlightening and
Circular.
maybe sometimes even entertaining to hear some of the items that are brought, if it weren't so sad. But I appreciate many of my colleagues whom I respect speaking out against tariffs. Let me remind folks that President Trump, during his first term relating to tariffs, a few other things too, but tariffs, unified Democratic control for 2 years, result in no, quite honestly, disengagement on trade altogether that I think brought disrespect to our country and I think damaging in many ways. But I'll move on here to talk more about tax. Treasury's into interagency of education to address the ongoing costs to taxpayers associated with the Biden administration's. Last year, I joined several colleagues in urging Treasury to rescind the waiver which prevented collection on defaulted student loans. An important step toward restoring accountability and protecting taxpayers. I certainly appreciate your partnership in the effort. The Working Families was very productive. Certainly teed up by the cuts in jobs, a Trump term. And it's interesting, in the meantime, we had a bipartisan bill where we had many of my colleagues, both sides of the aisle, vote so many things, Jobs Act. And then when we even added more middle-class advantages, whether it's a school choice, whether it's the tax relief for overtime, for the list goes on. But because there was no chance that President Biden would sign that, they voted against it. So when there was a chance that President Biden could have signed a bill, now it didn't get to the Senate, obviously, where it seemed to be the situation, they opposed it. So I just I get frustrated. We can have good discussions here in this room, and I think it's important to note that there were some happening leading up to the Obama administration that even President Obama advocated for lowering the corporate tax rate. Now, he advocated it didn't have enough support here. President Trump came in, he advocated for a consider.
Is your team stuck again? Plan for AI coding with models like GLM 5.1, DeepSeek, GPT, Kimi, and more. Connect it to tools like Claude Code, OpenCode, or Cursor, so your team can use the right model inside the tools they already work with. Write code, fix bugs, test ideas, and move faster toward a working demo. Plans start from $10.
They are going to be very much appreciated by a lot of folks. A few years down the road especially, but I think even in the near term as people start thinking more about the future. Now, a lot's been said about various things and certainly the president, but I know that there's been quite a bit of chat from the president's investments. I'm just wondering if you could set the record straight on this and explain how there have been mischaracterizations during the process and mischaracterizations of the law, perhaps.
I want to be very clear on this. President Trump's investment holdings are maintained exclusively in fully discretionary accounts managed by independent institutions who have sole and exclusive authority over all investment decisions, including asset allocation, trading, rebalancing, and portfolio management. They receive no advance notice of trades, cannot alter or override the manager's strategies or models, and unlike Congress, this was intentionally designed for separation between President Trump and the independent third-party investment managers overseeing his account.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And let me just close by saying that the American people are wanting us to have good conversations, thoughtful conversations, and I think thoughtful and reasonable individuals know that what we did with our tax policy has been good. Thank you for your role in that, and I want us to work together for the betterment of our economy moving forward, just as the American people would expect us to do. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being with us today. You were here a year ago. You came and you closed your testimony by saying the president's bold leadership had laid the foundation for what you called a golden age economy. More recently, you said the economy grow by at least 3 points this year and that Americans would see a non-inflationary boom. Mr. Secretary, hard to find constituents in my district who believe that the economy, in fact, many of them are struggling more today than they were the last time you were in front of this committee. Personal savings are shrinking, disposable income, and families are paying more and more for basic necessities. So I would like to ask you a couple of yes or no questions about this golden economy. Electricity bills are up 8.5%. Is that golden?
Sir, you can ask.
Yes or no?
You can ask
Yes
me a
or
question.
no?
You can't tell me how to answer it. So,
okay, let me put it this way, Mr. Secretary, because you're obviously not here to answer questions.
I am here to answer
It's my time, Mr. Secretary. It's my time. Health insurance costs are up 26%. That's not golden. Child care costs are up 9%. That's not golden. Gas prices are up nearly 50%. That's not golden. Grocery prices, family budgets, that's not golden. Working families don't feel like they're living through a golden age. And while H.R. 1 may have delivered modest tax cuts for some American families, are seeing those savings wiped out by higher where they shop. Is that what this administration considers a golden age? And it's rhetorical, so you don't even have to try and talk over me. Secretary, Mr. Secretary, What should I tell my constituents when they ask about these costs? Farmers who are being hit by high costs of fuel and fertilizers, who can't get their product to market because of the war in Iran.
You should tell them that we've had 2.6% economic growth since President Trump took office, despite the Democratic.
These farmers
well, no, people in California, one person
reclaiming my time. These farmers are pretty smart, Mr. Secretary, and they're not going to fall for that line. I understand your unwillingness to testify and answer details regarding the IRS settlement with the Trump administration due to ongoing litigation. But at the end of the day, your department, the Treasury Department, and specifically the IRS, is going to have to carry out its demands. And let me be very specific about what those demands are. The settlement says the IRS is prevented from raising any and all claims against the president with respect to any tax return filed before 2026. So, Mr. Secretary, as the head of the Treasury Department, you will be in charge of carrying out the demands of this settlement. So let me present a real, true scenario for you. If on May 18th, President's amendment to his 2024 federal tax return, and the amendment says, quote, I'm owed an extra $10 billion. That's the amount that I forgot to claim on my tax return. Is it your opinion that the settlement agreement signed by Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general and President Trump's former personal attorney, would require you to pay President Trump $1 billion? No questions asked?
We will.
Okay, you won't answer that either. Do you think this is something that the American people should know? How can you sit here and not provide any answers to the American people?
Because
it is astonishing to me that the president deal before it was signed. Of course he knew about it. He directed it. So why not cash out on his get out of jail? As I read it, he can absolutely file an amendment to his tax return, claim a giant refund. And you have to sit there while he robs the Treasury, and more important, while he robs the American people blind. That's as unacceptable as you refusing to answer questions posed to you by the members of this committee. I yield back.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here. We'll continue until morale improves.
Well,
this is the beginning of the Charles Dickens.
Given that the Democratic House has a 17% approval rate, now I see why.
No, this is the opening of a Charles Dickens novel, is it not? So it was the best, it was the worst of times. Wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epic of belief. It was the epic of incredulity. It was a season of light. It was a season of darkness. It was a spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. How well that describes what we're going through. I will remind my friends on the other side that we hold digit place in the prior administration. The president inherited one of the worst situations he could possibly. The cost of gasoline, by the way, worth it's 51 cents a gallon. So facts are a funny thing. Use the ones that actually are true or bend them to any. What I really want to talk to you about, though, is part of what we did when we first did Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was something called opportunity zones. And I'm going to invite you to come to Erie, Pennsylvania. Erie, Pennsylvania was at one time that fell on very, very. But when we did the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, opportunity zones, this encouraged private investment, not taxpayer dollars, but private investment going into areas where the government would have wasted its money, and does oftentimes, but say to private investors, you know what? Using the tax code, we're going to give you an opportunity to invest in something while other people would usually walk away from. I got to tell you, in Erie, under leadership of key stakeholders and local leaders such as Erie Downtown, in the strategy of Erie, refocus plan, the city committed itself to a goal of revitalizing its downtown front industrial heritage, using opportunity zones as a catalyst. Erie has leveraged more than 40 investment. This investment created 110 new residential units, revitalized more than 100,000 square feet of commercial space, restored 8 historic properties, and brought to a neighborhood previously designated as a food desert. One of the things I wanted to talk about, because under this new plan, we decided, hey, you know what? We did some great jobs when it came to cities. Let's look at rural areas. So what I'm going to ask you, if you would please come to Erie, where you can see how these actually things worked in living color. Only thing I question, what keeps you getting up in the morning and come into things like this when you know all that work that you do, all that time that you spend, all your staff works to make it better for the American people? They help with this idea of it being a Republican idea or a Democrat idea. Why don't we just look like what's best for America?
The representative, first of all, is a poster child in a great way. So I look forward to coming and visit, and I look forward to visiting the rural areas in your district, and also many representatives, senators from the other side of the aisle have called me for guidance on opportunity zones. I pointed out that they voted again, but I meant to help the American people. We can overcome that they voted against them. It is in statute now, and we work in people.
You know, I appreciate that. So we'll get with you that, because I have 2 friends in the Senate right now that represent Pennsylvania. They are sometimes would have been described as polar opposites. They're not. So between Senator Fetterman and Senator McCormick, we have 2 people in the Senate now working together to do the best things that they can do for the state represent that they work for. I think if we could twist things around, and unfortunately elections get in the way of us doing things that are actually beneficial to the American people. We tend to work a party spectrum rather than the people we represent. As I said, I represent 750,000 people. None of them are, it's not an all red, it's not all blue. And in fact, what discourages me is too many of our people who live in the area no longer have faith, and they don't. But please, we're going to invite you. We're going to invite Senator Fetterman, Senator McCormick. We were to sit down with you. There is such a wealth of opportunity taking place right now. The figures don't lie. Sometimes the liars can figure, but figures don't lie. Thank you for doing what you're doing in your private life to walk a walk into this. When they first described it as a swamp, they had no idea how deep the swamp has become. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for your dedication to the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
Thank you, and for joining us here today. It's always kind of unusual when you start a hearing and are instructed what you can't say in an open and free democracy. Having said that, you mentioned in your testimony core inflation a couple of times. What's the difference between core inflation and inflation?
Many people believe, or it is in general, energy prices and food prices, which are fast moving. And I would say that energy, when this Iran conflict ends.
So is gasoline considered part of core inflation?
Yes, sir.
It is. So those remarks, core inflation reflects gasoline prices.
Core inflation, it reflects the underlying trend in inflation and whether that inflation has become to the system as it did during President Biden.
Has the war in Iran had anything to do with core inflation? Does the war in Iran have anything to do with core inflation? Or you can't answer that, or either, or is that, are we precluded from asking that?
What the question is.
Let me make it as simple as I can. Does the war in Iran, are you with me? Does the war
thus far, sir,
cost have witnessed the rise in gas prices as a cause.
well, again, that is the regular inflation, and gas prices have gone up, which I believe will be temporary.
So gas prices have gone up, but you believe they're temporary.
Core inflation it has dropped 0.5% since President Trump came to office.
Geez, just tell those people, geez, this whole thing, don't you understand core inflation? You guys are better off. I mean, these gas prices, I don't know what you people are thinking out there. For God's sake, you know, they're just, you should be doing cartwheels in the street over the price of gas. So what is the administration?
Taken the.
Are you in favor of eliminating the gas tax?
We have moved to.
Are you in favor of eliminating the gas tax?
We would like to work.
Are you able to answer that, or is that not?
Well, if I'm not interrupted, I can, Congressman.
Well, I'm waiting for your answer.
We have asked Congress to move to eliminate the gas tax. That is done through statute.
I've moved that. So you're in favor of eliminating the gas tax?
We have asked for that.
So we can join bipartisanly today because you're in favor to eliminate the gas tax.
Again, the White House has asked for it, sir.
They have? Why isn't it before the committee for a vote?
I don't run the agenda.
Hear that we're in favor of something that we can work on bipartisanly, help relieve people who need it the most. Forgive me, but people in my district aren't doing cartwheels over this economy. They haven't seen the impact that you claim that they're all doing. People hear a lot of rhetoric, et cetera, but that doesn't pay their grocery bills. That doesn't pay their heating costs. That doesn't put fuel in their tanks. That doesn't help them get through the day-to-day grind of their lives. And so coming here and filling us with platitude and telling us how grateful we should be to the Trump administration for everything that it's done.
Well, Congressman,
is this war responsible for any of this?
Congressman, food at home is up 2.5% since President Trump took office.
Are we at war currently?
Which is twice